There is a version of you that has been waiting, not the version that second-guesses every decision, not the version that lies awake replaying a conversation from 3 days ago, not the version that bends itself into uncomfortable shapes trying to make people comfortable, not the version that says yes when every part of it means no, that over-explains when it owes nobody an explanation, that shrinks in rooms where it should be taking up space. There is another version, one that moves differently, that speaks less and means more, that does not chase, does not beg, does not perform for an audience that was never worth performing for, one that operates from a place so grounded, so internally settled, that the chaos other people carry simply does not find purchase. That version is not a fantasy. It is not something reserved for people with a different upbringing, or a different temperament, or a different life. It is available to you right now, but getting there requires you to unlearn some things. Specifically, it requires you to unlearn the idea that psychological power looks like aggression, that dominance means loudness, that strength means always having an answer. Machiavelli understood power at a level most people never reach, not the performance of power, not the costume of it, but the actual mechanics. How it is built, how it is maintained, how it is lost. And the principles he identified have held up across 5 centuries because they are not about politics or manipulation in the cheap sense. They are about human psychology, about what actually moves people, what actually commands respect, and what actually keeps you in control of your own life when the world is doing everything it can to take that control away. Here are 7 of those principles, applied not to courts and armies, but to the life you are actually living. The office, the relationships, the social dynamics, the internal battles that nobody else can see, but that determine everything about how you show up. Law 1. The person who needs nothing from the conversation controls it. Walk into almost any interaction, and you will find that one person is subtly, often unconsciously, trying to extract something: validation, agreement, approval, the sense that they are liked, respected, seen as competent or attractive or worth taking seriously. And that need, that quiet hunger underneath the words, is visible even when they think it is not. People feel it, and the moment they feel it, the dynamic shifts in a direction that does not favor you. Machiavelli observed that the most powerful figures in any room were not the ones making the most noise or displaying the most status. They were the ones who appeared to need the least from the interaction, who were there but not desperate to be there, who engaged but did not require the engagement to go a particular way, who could take or leave the outcome without their internal state collapsing either way. This is not coldness. It is not indifference to people or outcomes. It is something more precise than that. It is the ability to want things without being controlled by the wanting, to prefer certain outcomes without becoming desperate for them, to care about a relationship or an opportunity without letting that care become visible leverage that other people can use against you. The practical shift is this: before any significant interaction, ask yourself what you are hoping to get from it, not in terms of practical outcomes, but emotionally. Are you hoping to be liked? Hoping to be validated? Hoping someone will finally understand you or take you seriously or confirm that you are on the right path? Identify the need. And then, before you walk in, release your grip on it. Not because the need is wrong, but because carrying it visibly into the room costs you more than it gains you. The person who can sit across from anyone in any context without quietly radiating a need for that person's approval has a psychological advantage that most people will never be able to articulate, but will always be able to feel. Law 2. Consistency is more powerful than intensity. Everyone has seen intensity. The person who shows up with enormous energy, enormous ambition, enormous presence, and then disappears. Who is completely devoted 1 week and completely absent the next, who burns hot and then burns out and leaves you uncertain about whether what you experienced was real or whether it was just weather. Intensity is impressive. It grabs attention. It creates moments. But Machiavelli was clear about what actually builds power over time, and intensity was not it. What builds power is consistency. The quiet, unremarkable, day after day practice of doing what you said you would do, being who you said you are, showing up in the same essential way, regardless of how you feel or what the circumstances are. Consistency is underrated because it is not exciting to watch. It does not make for a compelling story. Nobody writes articles about the person who simply did the work every day without drama or announcement, but power, real power, accumulates exactly that way, slowly, invisibly, and then suddenly all at once in a way that looks to outsiders like overnight success. There is also a relational dimension to this that Machiavelli understood. Consistent people are trusted, not because they are perfect, but because they are predictable in the right ways. You know where they stand. You know what to expect from them. You know that the version of them you encountered last month is roughly the version you will encounter next month. And in a world full of people whose behavior shifts with their mood and their audience, that reliability is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily valuable. The people who have built the most durable influence in any field, in any organization, in any relationship, are almost never the most dramatic or the most brilliant. They are the most consistent. Start being that person. Not spectacularly, just steadily. Every day, in the small, unremarkable ways that add up to something nobody can ignore. Law 3. Let your results speak first and your words follow if necessary. There is a compulsion that most people feel, particularly when they are trying to establish themselves or defend themselves or be taken seriously, to explain. To preemptively justify decisions before anyone has questioned them, to narrate their own competence rather than demonstrating it, to announce what they are going to do rather than simply doing it and letting the outcome do the announcing. Machiavelli found this tendency everywhere and was consistently skeptical of it. Not because explanation is always wrong, but because premature explanation almost always reveals insecurity. It says, "I am not sure you will believe in this unless I build a case for it first," and that uncertainty, once visible, becomes the thing people respond to, not the explanation itself, the uncertainty underneath it. The alternative is not silence in every situation, it is sequencing. It is doing the thing before talking about the thing, building before announcing, delivering before claiming, and allowing the reality of what you have created to carry the persuasive weight that words almost never can. Think about the people you find most credible in your own life, the ones whose opinions you actually seek out and take seriously. They are almost never the ones with the most elaborate explanations of why they know what they know. They are the ones who have simply, visibly demonstrated that they know it, who have shown you enough times that their read on a situation is accurate, their judgment is sound, their execution is reliable, that you no longer require the explanation. The results got there first and did all the necessary work. Build that reputation, not through self-promotion, through performance. Do the thing, do it well. Do it consistently enough that you become someone whose results precede them into every room. Law 4. The person who sets the frame wins the exchange. Most people think that the content of a conversation determines its outcome, that whoever has the better argument, the stronger evidence, the more persuasive logic, wins. Machiavelli understood that this was almost never true. What actually determines the outcome of most exchanges is not the content, but the frame, the underlying assumptions about what the conversation is really about, what is being evaluated, and whose standards of judgment apply. Whoever sets that frame before the other person can, has an advantage that logic alone cannot overcome. Because once a frame is established, everything said inside it is interpreted through it. You are not arguing on neutral ground. You are arguing on terrain that was shaped before the first word was spoken. This plays out in the smallest interactions. When someone criticizes your work, and you immediately defend it, you have accepted their frame that the work is in question and that you are on trial. When someone challenges a decision you made and you explain yourself at length, you have accepted their frame that the decision requires justification. When someone makes a claim about who you are and you argue with it, you have accepted their frame that their assessment deserves a response. What Machiavelli would observe is that the powerful response is almost never the defensive one. It is the one that calmly refuses the frame and offers a different one. Not with aggression, not with argumentation, but with the quiet confidence of someone who is not willing to be placed on trial for something that does not require a trial. The subtle, unspoken signal that says, "I am not participating in this conversation on those terms." Learn to recognize the frame before you engage. Ask whose assumptions you are operating inside, and if those assumptions do not serve you, do not fight them directly. Simply decline to accept them and proceed from your own. Law 5. Proximity to the wrong people is a cost you are paying whether you notice it or not. Machiavelli was relentless on this point across everything he wrote. The company you keep does not merely reflect who you are. It actively shapes who you are becoming. The people you spend the most time with are calibrating your sense of what is normal, what is possible, what is acceptable, what is worth wanting. And if those people are operating below the level you are trying to reach, their calibration is quietly working against you every single day. This is not about arrogance. It is not about discarding people because they are not useful enough or successful enough or impressive enough. It is about something more fundamental. It is about recognizing that energy is real, that standards are contagious, and that the environment you put yourself in consistently is not a passive backdrop. It is an active force shaping the trajectory of your life. The wrong people are not always obviously wrong. They do not always show up as dramatic or toxic or visibly destructive. Sometimes they are simply people who are comfortable where you no longer want to be. People who have made peace with limitations you are trying to move beyond. People whose version of a good enough life would leave you feeling like you had wasted the one you had. And spending large amounts of time inside that version of the world, inside that set of expectations and norms, pulls you toward it, whether you intend it to or not. Machiavelli would not tell you to cut everyone loose dramatically. He would tell you to be honest about what proximity cost you and whether you are willing to keep paying it. To become intentional about who you are building your inner circle from, and to understand that protecting that circle is not selfishness. It is one of the most important investments you will ever make. Law 6. Emotional control is strategic, not stoic. People misunderstand this principle constantly. They hear emotional control and they think it means suppressing emotion, hiding what you feel, presenting a blank face to the world regardless of what is happening inside. That is not what Machiavelli meant, and it is not what actually works. What he observed was something more nuanced. The most effective people are not the ones who feel nothing. They are the ones who have developed the ability to choose when and how their emotional state becomes visible information. They feel everything, but they do not leak everything. And that gap between experiencing an emotion and expressing it strategically, that is where the power lives. When you react emotionally in real time to everything that happens, you hand people a map of your interior. They learn what gets to you, what destabilizes you, what makes you defensive, what makes you desperate. And once they have that map, they can navigate you. They know which buttons to press and in what order. They can predict your behavior because your behavior is driven by triggers that are now visible and accessible to anyone paying attention. Emotional control closes that map, not by pretending you have no interior, but by deciding what you choose to make public and what you choose to manage privately. By putting a pause between stimulus and response that is long enough for you to choose your response rather than simply executing it. By developing the ability to feel the pull of a reaction and decide, in that moment, whether expressing it serves you or costs you. This is a practice, not a personality trait. It is built through deliberate repetition. Every time you feel the impulse to react and choose instead to respond, you are strengthening something. Every time you sit with a difficult emotion long enough to understand it before you act on it, you are developing a capacity that most people never build, and the accumulation of that practice over time produces something that looks, from the outside, like unshakable composure, which is one of the most commanding things a person can project. Law 7. Play a longer game than anyone around you is willing to play. This is the principle that separates people who win occasionally from people who win consistently, and it is perhaps the most difficult one to apply because it runs directly against every short-term instinct you have. The short game is everywhere, the instant response, the immediate retaliation, the quick win that feels satisfying in the moment and costs you significantly later, the need to be seen as right now rather than being proven right eventually, the impulse to resolve tension immediately even when letting it sit would serve you better, the hunger for validation today rather than results next year. Machiavelli was almost contemptuous of people who could not resist the short game, not because he was indifferent to quick wins, but because he understood that someone who always takes the bait, always goes for the immediate payoff, always optimizes for how they feel right now rather than where they want to be in 5 years, is someone who can be controlled. You can predict their behavior, you can bait them into mistakes, you can engineer their short-term satisfaction in ways that serve your long-term position. The person playing a longer game is much harder to manipulate because their decision-making is not governed by immediate emotional impulses. They can absorb a short-term loss because they can see where it leads. They can resist an obvious provocation because they know where reacting leads. They can be patient in a way that looks, to the people around them, like either remarkable self-discipline or alarming indifference, and either perception works in their favor. Extend your horizon. When you are about to react to something, ask where this reaction lands you in 30 days, not 30 minutes. When you are making a decision based on how you feel right now, ask what the person you are trying to become would decide. When someone offers you a short-term win that requires a long-term compromise, know the answer before they finish the offer. The longer your game, the fewer players you are competing with. Because most people cannot sustain the patience that a long game requires, they will take the short win. They will react to the provocation. They will fold at the first sign of discomfort. And every time they do, they hand a small advantage to the person who did not. Collect those advantages, patiently, consistently, without announcing that you are doing it. Here is what connects all 7. They are all about the same thing at their core. The distance between stimulus and response, the space between what happens to you and how you engage with it, between what people do and what you choose to do about it, between the immediate pull of a reaction and the considered choice of a response. Most people have almost no distance there. Something happens and they react. Someone says something and they respond. Someone challenges them and they defend. Someone ignores them and they pursue. The stimulus runs directly into the response with almost no space in between. And that is exactly where they are vulnerable. That is where they are being controlled by external events rather than internal decisions. Every one of these 7 laws is a method for widening that space, for building the gap that makes genuine choice possible, for becoming someone whose behavior is determined by their own values and judgment, rather than by whoever or whatever is pressing on them hardest in a given moment. That is what psychological power actually looks like. Not louder, not harder, not more aggressive or more defended or more armored against the world, just more deliberate, more grounded, more genuinely in command of the one thing that nobody can take from you unless you hand it over. Your response. Guard it, choose it. And understand that every time you do, you are building something that compounds over time into a version of yourself that the chaos around you simply cannot reach. That version is not somewhere in the future. It is being constructed right now, in this moment, in every choice you make about where your attention goes, how you respond to difficulty, whose opinion you allow to matter, and how long a game you are willing to play. Start building it. Today. one deliberate choice at a time.